Three, two, one. We're just getting set up here for our live stream. And welcome everyone. I am here with and Jon Radoff, and we're getting started in just a moment. Awesome. It looks like our stream is working. Thank you, tech people, for confirming. And thanks. Morning. Super excited to be here. I'm going to start with some introductions. I'm Amy Jo Kim. I'm the CEO, co-founder of the Game Thinking Academy. I'm a game designer and startup coach, product and game teams worldwide to help them find product fit and build compelling experiences. And I'm here with Jon Radoff, CEO of Beamable. Why don't you give us a quick intro, Jon?
Hey, I'm Jon Radoff. My background is in making game technologies for the internet, and Beamable is infrastructure for people that live games for the modern game economy, whether that's play where we've been or NFTs and crypto games where we're going.
Awesome. We also have the amazing Mitch Zamara. Quick intro, Mitch.
Hi, yeah. I'm a professional game designer who's been in the industry for close to 15 years. I've worked primarily in social games, then free-to-play games on mobile, and now I'm forging new frontiers, making play-to-earn games on the blockchain, leading design on Million on Mars Land Rush, launching on Wax in about 3 weeks.
Really exciting. We're going to hear more about Mitch's game shortly. But, so many people are interested in crypto. You, Mitch, you're elbow deep. I know, Jon, you're working with many different game developers. But let's start with some basic definitions. Today, we're going to talk about NFT gaming. So, what's an NFT? Why don't you tell us, Mitch, an NFT game?
Sure. So NFT is a non-fungible token, which is used to determine a sort of store of value or a utility or a store of reference to something that is going to exist and be created in a provable, scarce manner. So various creators can create these tokens and can use them inside of their projects. Once a user has acquired one of these non-fungible tokens, it's inside of their wallet. It can be traded, it can be sold, it can be redistributed. People have full use over these digital assets and are able to transact with them in a new method that hasn't traditionally been available to people in more of these more closed ecosystems.
So, Jon, why is gaming such a big deal? What is an NFT really more than a pointer to a JPEG?
Back for a moment, the real distinction is open versus closed economies. So most game that exists is a closed economy. So if you're crafting a game like that, the game maker, case Activision Blizzard, they are the Federal Reserve, the trade regulator, the monopoly supplier, everything. And what that means is everybody only transacts within a certain set of rules that's existing. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. There's a fun experience in that, and often those guardrails and constraints experience. So it's not that these open economies that Mitch was just talking are inherently better, but they enable entirely new kinds of experiences. From the ground economy with the idea that people might be and exchanging, and by the assets, but building more code around it, because NFT technology, you actually open up the programmability of the environment. You open it up to an application ecosystem. It enables developers to add on components to it. It disrupts the whole industry in terms of the kinds of people who can participate, add to it. But the designs, while some of them do have kind of a superficial similarity to things we've seen in free-to-play and stuff already, they're going to keep this. I think it'll keep invoking more creativity, really interesting economies. Like we're at the very first inning. We're in the first part of the first inning of this market. Like early right now that I'm excited because there's so much creativity that's coming out of it, even in this early time.
Yep.
Right. Now, both of you lived through and participated in the free-to-play revolution, right? Where games used to be, you'd pay a certain amount. We experimented with subscriptions. And there was this huge sea change in gaming called free-to-play, where games became free and they were monetized with microtransactions. Now we're entering a new era called play-to-earn. So what is play-to-earn gaming and how has it really evolved out of free-to-play gaming?
I think that play to earn is definitely representative of a new sort of shift or a new paradigm within the traditional games model. From my perspective, I see it as sort of we've moved from this phase of a consumer goods model that costs money for a box product, sort of driving towards the lowest common denominator of being free in the sort of second era of free-to-play games, in which you can't really beat the cost of free. But now that we have entered this sort of new era, we've actually learned that you actually can beat the cost of free, in which you get paid to play games, or you play and earn from playing games. And that to me is sort of a very brand new concept that has been sort of more formalized, but like John and I have talked about numerous times before, this concept actually has been around for a very long time. It's just been sort of more gray and black market activities with traditional things like gold selling, account selling, item selling. I mean, myself, I've sold items for EverQuest and accounts on World of Warcraft over the years. We've sold Magic the Gathering cards. Like, these things have already happened many, many times over. It's just a much more trustless and decentralized way in which people can actually do these transactions and feel more safe and confident in the behaviors that they're actually doing.
So
the Magic the Gathering.
Go ahead, John.
Oh, I was just going to add the Magic the Gathering example you just gave, Mitch, is a really interesting one because of World of Warcraft. Like, they don't allow these secondary. They feel that it takes away from their revenue, from player fun. But Magic the Gathering, of course, is an open economy. So, like, we already have these examples of open economy games, whether it's that or Pokemon and whatnot, that exist. So that actually existed way before even MMORPGs.
Absolutely.
So we're going to get more into that when we get to the details of the games we're playing. There's another term that is really widely used and I think often misunderstood, which is a DAO. It stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. So, Mitch, how do you understand DAOs and the role that they play in play-to-earn gaming?
Yeah, I mean, this is a brand new unforged space where we're kind of largely learning the rules or making them up or figuring them out as we go in real time in many ways. From a game developer's perspective, we look at DAOs as outside forces, as sort of a mixture between a traditional guild, a traditional investor, a traditional organization, but they have sort of a unique formation that is sort of a little bit different than any of those sort of individual pieces on their own. So from us, we look at a DAO that might come into a game that we're building as a strong outside force that can be positive or potentially could be disruptive, depending on the impact they have to the game economy, the overall sort of game experience, and sort of just how many people that they could affect. So for us, we think very, very carefully about the impact of a DAO that comes into our games, and we want to make sure that they can be accommodated, that everyone can still not feel that the market is getting driven up, and that everyone can effectively play together and have a lot of fun as a group of people, and not disrupt the core game economy.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Sorry. My internet connection seems to be having some trouble.
That's not a problem.
So John, can you elaborate on your understanding of DAOs?
Yeah, Mitch, give a good overview. Here's how I would think about it, though. Like, enabling is a whole new category of innovation, specifically around governance, which have broad applicability from the traditional ways we've had that, which would be like company, but have DAOs that can govern a protocol in crypto, for example. It be a guild, you could have it run a nonprofit, you could have it be. You think about any kind of organization that people come together around, DAOs are tend to be a little bit more grassroots and bottom as opposed to top-down sort of executive level. But it's implementing governance and making governance structures more kinds of organizations and allowing people to experiment with different methods within their groups. And then by making it into, that's really where a lot of additional innovation comes, because a lot of us have played games over the year, for example, like every game has a work well and some don't, and there can be political problems and drama and guilds and like all this stuff. Like I'm imagining a world in its own category of innovation where people just make works for DAOs that you can then utilize, and maybe is as simple as that's have to be like some others that we could talk about, huge like yield like that. I'm talking like just the simple that you use to run a game group with could be a DAO, and simplify decision making and governance and all this other stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that they can offer in the most like micro aspect and for sort of traditional gamers is that sort of evolution of that core guild or core clan model that we've already seen in traditional MMOs. I think, you know, if you've played in MMOs for a few years, you've probably seen a good degree of betrayal that has happened within the sub sort of politics of your own clans and guilds. People stealing from the clan vault or the guild vault, people backstabbing and joining competing guilds, people, you know, straight ninja looting entire items or drops and then rage quitting or selling the account. Like there's endless examples of these things that happened. And if those clans and guilds were bound to a more decentralized, more rigorous type DAO structure, those kind of things wouldn't even be plausible. Someone couldn't raid the guild bank without multi-sig approval from every other leader inside of the guild that's also signed off on those transactions, right? Like these kind of things will become non-issues in the future because of these structures that will exist.
It's going to be
Yes, you say that because you see it all over. Like I run club called Game Industry on Clubhouse. Admin decided to sort of czar of it, actually kicked me out of the group because he felt by himself. Like if that had been a DAO and it just to Clubhouse, then maybe that wouldn't have happened.
Exactly. That's exactly
this is something everybody needs.
Yep. I completely agree with you.
I feel that we need a whole follow-up episode just on DAOs because it's such a rich and interesting topic. But I'd like to dive into what's actually happening with gaming. Mitch, you have a couple of experiences, and I just want to sit back and listen to you talk about it. Let's start with your experiences in Axie Infinity, playing and then having scholars. Can you tell us, how did you discover Axie Infinity?
Yeah.
How did you start playing? What was it like to get scholars? Take us on the journey.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give you a brief overview of sort of my experience in the space and what I've observed and learned. So, let's see. I've been doing play to earn like as a strong sort of gamer for several months now. I've been actively sort of playing, investing, and working with people for the better part of, let's say, about 8 to 10 months. With Axie, I would say it's a game that I originally dismissed. I got very turned off against the sort of strong and expensive barrier to entry, the floor prices for Axies to get in. But after getting over a lot of my initial reservations and hearing about so many people that have had a lot of success and people that have like built some really, really impressive sort of organizational structures and helped a lot of people, I couldn't really ignore it eventually. So I did dive in. I own a bunch of Axie teams. I think I have like maybe 6 to 8 personally that I own. And to me, the game itself is one of the most enjoyable pet battle type games that I've played in quite a while. If you've played games like Pokemon, you've played turn-based games or card battlers or pet battler games, the core balance and the actual game presentation of what the battle system is really, really strong. The game balance itself is impressively tight. And the it is, but from a game development perspective, it's very obvious that they're still very early. There's a very deep meta that has not been fully fleshed out. They have a very light touch in terms of what their live ops experience is. Like, you can earn some daily SLP, you can complete some goals, but the crux of the game is a very light touch player versus environment experience where you progress through these level-based, progress through the levels. And then there's a player versus player battle arena where you have an MMR ranking system and you're able to battle other players and the winner gets to earn SLP. This core system has allowed them to grow to a couple million DAU, is my understanding. They've reached a really big critical mass sort of globally in very specific areas of Eastern Asia. Other parts of South America are also booming now inside of the play to earn space. And what's happening is this new sort of system in which people that are playing the game are not just battling, but they're also breeding. And the costs of breeding inside of Axie Infinity are not cheap. They're pretty expensive right now. And so what's happening is often sort of investor players are fronting the costs to breed these Axies or to form these teams and buying them off the marketplace. And they are partnering with other players who are able to play the game more religiously every single day, basically, in order to earn every day. And they're creating these business relationships called scholarships, which, if you're in the West, the idea this name or this word sounds a little bit off or a little bit weird, but it is sort of the ascribed word that is used in this relationship. And the reality is that it's an informal partnership that's done through the blockchain in a way in which you don't necessarily have to have you don't have to know that person's address. You don't have to know their full details, because you can trust them with the password, because they can't actually take anything out of the account. And so what these relationships have bloomed into are these massive organizations in which people are sharing teams with people. The people that they've shared them with are playing every single day, and they're earning SLP, which is the inflationary token you earn for playing Axie Infinity. And then they're able to then take that SLP and they're able to use it to actually pay for things that they care about or things that matter to them. For us, our scholars have used SLP to pay for their bills, pay it for things that they need. In some of our other games that we are building our play to earn communities around, we see people that are actually saving up and buying computer parts, improving their computers so that they can play their games better, that they can, improve their overall daily lives. And we're seeing these things happen in real time on a daily basis now. It's not just a conceptual type thing. It's, we have members that are in South America, that are in Asia, that are in the US even. We have them, we do have Americans that play the game. It does span a very global reaching sort of space now.
How did you find the scholars who you're now working with? How did that come?
They found us. We haven't actually tried to go out of our way to find anybody. Everyone has a friend who could probably use a little bit. And that's really the where it has always gone, is it's just been word of mouth, everyone talking to everybody. And most situations, it's always been a firsthand sort of word of mouth thing. More recently, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a second, another game that a lot of us have been playing called Mir 4, we've basically built our own sort of online guild and community, much more like a traditional World of Warcraft guild. And our members from in there are largely comprised of people out of South America, like Brazil, Mexico, Colombia. And a lot of these members now are playing Mir 4 with us and are now asking about Axie and are asking about other ways to play things on the side or in parallel. And so it's just sort of organically growing and cross-promoting in its own way. Most people that play crypto games don't play one, they play many.
Oh, that's interesting. Quick side note, John, we're having a lot of trouble with your connection. I'm wondering if you could try logging out and logging back in and making sure your connection's strong so that we can hear wisdom. So, Mitch, let's talk more about Mir 4.
Sure.
The other thing I want is that these games are happening on different blockchains, correct? I believe Axie is on a Ethereum sidechain called Ronin, correct?
Yep.
And what chain is Mir 4 on?
So Mir 4, I believe runs on I want to say it's the Kyber network. It's a little bit different than other games as well. So the way that the sort of play to earn structure in Mir 4 is designed is a little bit different than other sort of traditional games might be, or even blockchain games might be used to. So you basically, inside of this game, mine a resource known as dark steel, and that dark steel can then be melted outside of the game, converted into a token called Draco. And that Draco can be stored inside of your wallet. It can be redeemed back inside of the game for more dark steel, and it can be sent to other wallets that Draco can be sent to other players as well. That Draco could also be swapped in your sort of wallet, which the company behind the games or this platform is responsible for their main sort of primary token called Wemix. And that is the main thing that you're able to buy on all the exchanges, you're able to swap for, and it's available in several places. And their plan is to make multiple games, multiple projects within their ecosystem in which Wemix can be then swapped and traded into the game's native token, and sort of played within their ecosystem.
So you're also building your own game, Million on Mars. It's just about to launch, isn't that right?
That's right. We're about 3 weeks from launch. We're going to be on the Wax blockchain. It's even different than the other ones I've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. And did all of this work that you did playing Axie that went into your understanding of the space for building your own game, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I've been going deep on as many different projects as I possibly can to get a sense of what the experience is like for the buyers, the players, those that have money, those that are the whales. The experiences are vastly different for all of these different games and ecosystems, depending on your level of investment of time and money. I think how a game adapts to those degrees of investment will really determine their growth trajectory and their success in the future, in my opinion, because it really helps those key early factors.
So one of the things I find really confusing, and I bet other folks do too, the different blockchains out there and everybody pushing their blockchain as the best blockchain and the place you should be. Volatility of pricing, it's quite confusing. How do you parse this space? How did you, for instance, pick Wax as the blockchain to build on?
So for us, there's a few different factors that we evaluated, and every game project is going to need to do the same thing, or every team that's looking at these things. For us, we wanted to look at what has a very, very large established marketplace of existing customers or players that are eager for something new. So many of these different blockchains have established platforms. Many of them have very early or immature marketplaces that have very, very weak search tools or have very basic level display of what their NFTs are available on their platforms. So for us, we wanted something that was a little bit more mature in their marketplace offerings, so that we could list our NFTs and be confident they would have a good place to be bought and sold. Because if your tools for finding the content suck, your buyers and your sellers aren't going to be brought together and able to actually have a great place to have good quality commerce and to find the right types of price discovery that they really want to reach. This is sort of this natural order of things in which buyers and sellers want to reach actual reasonable prices that they all agree make sense. And if you don't provide that structure in place for them, then you get even wider ranges of speculation and volatility inside of your price, in front of your economy. The other thing that you want to look for is low friction. You want to make sure that the ability to actually transact and exist on that network is actually cost effective. So you hear a lot of us talk about gas prices on Ethereum, this GWE. That is a notion that doesn't exist always on every blockchain. Many blockchains that are proof of state or proof of authority or consensus don't necessarily have to worry about gas fees that are having to be paid for by processors and miners on side of your blockchain. So Wax is the great example of that, which we chose something that's mature market, low friction, easy to get into, and that's really that was what allowed us to make that choice initially. But I think what many people may not realize is that depending on how you structure your game, depending on how you structure your resources, you don't have to be limited to just one blockchain. You can extend things. You can recognize more than one wallet. You can allow things to be bridged, to be transported, to be even reminted if necessary. I think the biggest challenge that happens with NFTs is when you're dealing with minting numbers or issuance numbers, where you're trying to care about a very specific low number in which it was the first one minted. But if you are a project that those things are less of a concern because you are making a large number of items and for a very long time, then you have a much wider range of flexibility in terms of where your game can exist, because those you could basically burn it in one place and remake it at another. And I think that interoperability and transportability of assets within these multiple chains is going to become the inevitable future. And I'm sure Jon can talk a lot more about parachains and things like that, and the way those things are going to sort of connect the dots for us of interoperability in the future.
We just brought up a couple of terms that people might not know. But before I ask you to define those, it's great to see everyone here. We have type your questions into the chat. We're going to take your questions. Who knows? We might even pull you up on stage. But we really want this to be very interactive. So do you have comments? And then we'll get to you. So you talked about proof of stake and proof of work. I'm assuming Wax is a proof of stake chain. Yes?
It's sort of proof of stake, but there's also a degree of proof of consensus built around it. So the way that
Can you define, what does this mean? Tell us what proof of stake is and what proof of consensus is and why it's interesting.
Sure. So the traditional model that exists within blockchains in the way that they sort of were created in the beginning with like Bitcoin and Ethereum is that all the transactions basically have to be approved by the other people within the network. And those things generally require multiple people to basically say, yep, this happened. We all confirm this, so that everyone agrees. Then it gets added to the ledger as a permanent record. But of course, those transactions all are processes that take time. They have a cost associated with them, and generally the person who's trying to front that transaction is the one that gets stuck with the bill. In these newer models like proof of consensus or proof of stake, the people on the network effectively front load, or at least in the case of Wax, you prepay for your impact on the network, meaning that you stake Wax to your wallet, saying that you're going to basically you want your traffic or your transactions to be prioritized. And the way that Wax is designed is that they have sort of a built-in network prioritization system that has a built-in cooldown. So every 72 hours, effectively, your CPU usage, as it's called, sort of resets or works back towards normal. And so for people that are transacting on the network frequently, you need to stake more and more Wax to your wallet in order to sort of stay at the front of the line. Otherwise, you lose priority more over time in sort of a diminishing returns fashion. In addition to that, on Wax, you have your assets are stored inside of your wallet. And following the sort of more traditional model of a computer, you have RAM in your wallet, in which you effectively spend a little bit of Wax also to increase the amount of NFTs that you can store on your wallet. And with Wax, once you've done these things, you don't have to do anything else anymore. Your wallet has sort of an increased balance. You effectively bought RAM for how much NFTs you can hold, and you can just do everything you want on the network almost every single day without ever having to pay any more fees. It's more of like a initial setup to sort of cover your impact on the network. And once you've done that, you can actually even withdraw those at the end of your time in the blockchain and get your initial sort of staking back. So it's not like you don't pay a fee every time you transact. You more or less sort of prepay your investment into the ecosystem, and then you get a return on that when you leave.
It sounds quite similar. I mean, it really sounds similar to putting money in a bank and earning interest.
In a lot of ways, there's similarities to sort of opening a bank account, I think, and especially with Wax, it feels similar to that, because when you start in the beginning, you can make an account with 2 clicks, but if you start to try to do anything, you'll quickly realize that you don't have the basic resources that you need to really start to do a lot of actions. But getting Wax is pretty cheap and affordable. Wax is like 50 cents, and a couple of Wax gives you enough traction on the network to really do a lot of things, to play a lot of games. And game makers themselves are now even fronting the bills for RAM, for CPU, for their players, so that they're able to have less friction getting into the ecosystem as well.
Wow. So Wax sounds quite gaming centric.
Absolutely, yeah. They are very much built around NFTs, collectibles, and gaming. I think that's sort of their core focus, and it's something that was really attractive for us.
So we have some audience questions and comments. Michael Conard says, technically delegated proof of stake.
There you go. Yeah, of course.
Thank you,
of course,
Michael.
Better technical qualifications for me.
I think these
and
discussions
for
of the
everyone
blockchain
listening who's trying, like me, to learn about crypto and educate yourself, proof of work and variations on that is a very active area of development and discussion, and it's intensely relevant to how bad crypto is. And everybody in crypto is trying hard to make it much more environmentally friendly. So we also have a question from Sydney Liu. Sydney asks, how do you pick which chain to work on? In the future, as problems get solved, network effects kick in, using a layer 2 versus SOL versus something else. How do you pick which chain to work on?
It's largely the same kind of things that I was speaking to before. So it's, you think about the effect of your project on the network you're be on, and the impact that your customers or your players are going to have also transacting on that network. So if you're going to have a very high transaction real-time model in which a lot of things are going to be happening back and forth, you need something that has very, very low fees, that has a fast response rate, and that has high scalability, so that a lot of people can sort of exist and they can exist and transact on that network without having to pay every single time. You want really low friction is this kind of name of the game here for anyone that's a traditional game maker.
I'm going to reload this real quick to see if we can get Jon on.
I mean, I'm connected and I see it picking up my audio, but for some reason it doesn't seem to be processing into your end of things.
I hear you loud and clear.
So it might be Amy
Sure
Jo's
do.
side here. I don't know. I was just going to add that I think these discussions, it can get technical really fast. The main things to understand here is that proof of work is just about graphic puzzles, and that's what Bitcoin and Ethereum was based on, and it's very expensive. It's slow. Any transaction that can actually be done, and that just doesn't work for games. So games are microtransaction heavy environments. A big game may do millions, if not even billions, of microtransactions. To enable that, you have to move to a network that actually can accommodate that and can keep the costs really low. So Beamable, we are blockchain agnostic. We want game developers to use whatever blockchain their customers and is appropriate for them. And the two main considerations really just comes down to, number one, the performance character. Microtransactions have to be fast and cheap for you as a game developer and for your player experience. The other consideration is the ability of people to spend money. What's the marketplace? Are there people with wallets there that want to play your kind of game? There's quite a few of these networks now. So the whole speed, high energy costs really is as far as games are concerned, because whether you're on or Solana, Avalanche, the layer 2 networks on it, stuff like Immutable and what Polygon and whatnot, like is very, very energy efficient, and almost as important as that, the performance will work for you as a game developer, and all of the places where you can, I think, be that people are going to be able to trade your items and
right. So in many ways, it sounds like it's not that different from any viable community or game. There's no sure recipe, but you need to go somewhere that has enough infrastructure, and then with you and everybody else grows. I mean, there's kind of a chicken and egg critical mass thing going on with all these competing blockchains, it seems.
Yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned layer two. About layer two. Not everybody in the audience might understand what is a layer two network. Could you explain?
People are typically Ethereum layer was a concept that can apply to just about anything, but a layer two on network on Ethereum, Polygon, aka Matic, immutable, optimism.
What's the characteristic that defines layer two?
So they're all just Ethereum, but they're separate from the Ethereum. Way to explain is that it's just a separate network, Ethereum main network, where in a different, typically proof of stake or the on this layer 2 network is much higher. It's higher speed. So what you can do is Ethereum and various altcoins over into the layer. Then you play on the layer 2 network, or you transact, or use your DeFi application, whatever it is on the layer 2, you cost, and eventually export it back to Ethereum again, trade it for US dollars or whatever it is that you want to do. So they're like islands off of the main of Ethereum, where things are just more efficient.
Yep. Right now it feels kind of like this weird sort of like parallel system in which like everyone believes that if it exists on the main net, it's the real truth and it's very like real. And there's this sort of conceptualized notion that if it's on layer 2, it's mostly real, but people don't really have the same like it's weird because like for any of us, we don't really, most of us that actually play these games or in these ecosystems, just we don't even think about like, oh, layer 1, layer 2. It's just I have them or I don't. I'm on these networks or I'm not. I have the tokens or I don't. Like it's just the lines blur really, really quickly. And when you're sort of deep into it, you're not even thinking much about the fact that you're sort of in these separate ecosystems or on these separate islands, because the speed in which these bridges and the interoperability is coming together, that the web and the network is sort of all those threads are interconnecting, has really kind of brought the barriers down, has made it much easier to exist. And you can buy an NFT on Matic, you can move it on and sell it on OpenSea now. You can, these things are all quickly crossing and bridging so that everyone has a much better experience no matter where they are.
So, Mitch, I know a lot of game developers thinking, wow, should I build a blockchain game? Should I build an NFT game? What's it like? What's the reality? Jon, you're going to be supporting a lot of those developers. Can you take us on your journey a bit with Million on Mars? What sparked the idea? How long have you been working on it? About how big is the team? How did you come up with the core gameplay? Because the biggest like I'm hearing about is what kind of gameplay is going to work on crypto? What's ideally suited to crypto? Earlier, collectible cards, an obvious example, but tell us about your journey and your thinking as you bringing this game to life.
Sure. So I've been with the team for approaching, I guess, about 4 to 6 months now. It's been a really exciting time to work with this team on this project. Million on Mars started originally as a Steam game, which has been built and it's still being developed. It's a crafting MMO in the truest sense. But we had a strong feeling that Steam was going to be quickly changing their policies this year with the rising tide of NFTs and play to earn. And so we've kept that game agnostic from any aspects of NFTs and play to earn so that we can still exist on Steam as it is right now and allow us to sort of build out our core crafting MMO experience. In parallel, we also recognize this, like I said, the rise of NFTs and then realized that we could build a separate experience still on Mars and sort of capture that opportunity and figure out a way to reach a new audience with this metaverse on Mars that we are building. So we wanted to build something that is mass market, that can reach a lot of people, that can be playable on nearly any device, and can really kind of reach the scale that us as game makers are used to building. So myself, our CTO, Eric, both used to work together at Zynga back in the Mafia Wars Farmville era. And we're used to building these social games and these free-to-play experiences that can scale to millions of players. And for us, we look at the play to earn, the blockchain space, and this new sort of paradigm as sort of a reset button on something that we've already done a decade ago in a lot of ways, except that the rule book has been kind of thrown out, and we get to write a whole new rule book and playbook for how to do things. And we get to sort of challenge our previous notions of what used to work. We get to sort of come up with new conventions, and we get to really kind of forge this brand new frontier and figure out the best way to do things. Right now, there's certainly a lot of we're seeing a lot of people and a lot of projects recreate the old and rebuild things in sort of just a new fashion, in sense of bolting on blockchain or play to earn components onto existing free to play games. We see purely crypto native experiences like Axie Infinity coming out of this ecosystem that are naturally designed more to fit within limited scarcity and self-governance and other models like this. It's really going to be up to game developers to figure out the best fit for what they're building, because it's not going to be, there isn't going to be a one size fits all approach to these things. I would say, as someone who's built game economies for many years, moving into this space has been arguably the most exciting and the most challenging aspect of my career to date, in the sense that the tangibility, the scarcity, and the very sort of realness of what we are making is it is on a different level than what I've made before in free-to-play games. It just feels more real when you have these assets in your wallet and you're able to transact with them in a way that isn't just purely virtualized inside of a closed ecosystem. So when you buy and sell items on a marketplace or an auction house in World of Warcraft, everything is done in gold. You are just purely in the game world. When you've been playing a game inside of play to earn, your brain thinks about them in a different way. There's a switch that is flipped inside of your brain that does not go back, and you basically think about your time and your relationship in games in a very different way. And I personally see this as the future of where all these types of game experiences are headed.
Why are you so excited about it?
Me?
Like, what's
Where to begin? But I've talked a lot. I want to hear John. Why are you so excited about
I do.
it?
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
John, you're
Is his connection still
bad.
coming out?
Yeah,
Is it
and
not
we're getting
coming through?
reports.
Because I hear you fine and my network
I
speed
know.
is fine. So
We're getting
I'm wondering if
reports.
it's your software, Amy Jo. I don't know. Am I not coming across
Mitch
to you,
is
Mitch?
coming through perfect. You're coming through terrible. The people on YouTube are telling us they just can't hear you. So I don't think it is because
there's anything I
Mitch
can
is
do.
coming
I
through
don't-
fine, and it's nothing on you. It's just I'm getting a lot of feedback that people cannot hear you. So
Don't know
it's
what to-
very frustrating for them when you talk. Yikes, it's terrible because you have so much to say. So I think what we need to do for today is have Mitch do most of the talking. But John, we're going to fix this, and we're going to have part 2 very soon, because I'm dying to hear what you have to say. You could try just going audio only. That would be one thing to try. But Mitch, I do want to ask you a few more questions since you have a good connection. So crypto is really exciting. It's also full of uncertainty. Which chain, it is the token I'm buying going to hold value? They say that these NFTs are portable across games. Is that really going to be true? Which of the 50 free-to-play games right now that they're the next big thing I should try. It's a tricky thing to navigate. What I love is that given all of that, you jumped in.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, what is it that's so, like, if you were speaking to a game developer cautious like me, I'm not sure, I don't know quite why is it so valuable for game developers to get their hands dirty with this?
Sure. So for me, the signs were really early, in the sense that when I first started to look in this space, when I first started to play a lot of the play to earn games and explore things, I had a lot of doubts. I was very much waiting to be convinced and to find something that really helped me understand Like, how does this all work? Why are people putting in so much time and money into these things? And I played a lot of different things, ignored a lot of things, and eventually I found a couple of game experiences that really clicked for me and really helped me understand, like, oh, now this makes a lot more sense. So one game I've talked about a lot in the past is Lost Relics, which is on the Engine ecosystem. And Lost Relics is sort of a roguelike Diablo-inspired type dungeon crawler, with a lot of the traditional RPG mechanics. That was like the first real blockchain play to earn game that I played that really kind of like helped me understand these pieces. Helped me really realize that there is very really unique value within scarcity and provable scarcity, and within these play to earn ecosystems. I think the biggest thing for game makers to realize is that what's old is new again. Meaning that a lot of the traditional things that used to work a decade ago in the beginning of free to play games is basically reborn and can work all over again. And I'm seeing a lot of those sort of lessons that we learned a long time ago all just coming back and paying dividends a decade later. As a game maker, the amount of deja vu I have felt over the last 6 to 8 months has been immeasurable. I hear the doubts, the criticisms, the pushback from both inside of the industry and outside of the industry, and it is literally the same things being said as what I remember when I worked at Zynga in 2009 to 2011. Back then people called social games and Facebook games not real games. They called people that played Farmville and Candy Crush not real gamers. Like, these kind of notions were commonplace a decade ago. I used to have a very negative opinion or reputation just because I worked at a company like Zynga. I remember my resume literally getting rejected and almost laughed at by Blizzard when I tried to apply for a designer job there, because they didn't consider social game designers real game designers. And a decade later, I'm sure they like people that have experience in free to play now. But back then in 2009, it was a very different experience. And I think we're in this exact same kind of rebirth, this new paradigm shift in which the same kind of things are happening. Although I think enough lessons have been learned about missing the free-to-play boat or being late to it, in which game companies now aren't going to necessarily shy away from someone who's been designing blockchain play-to-earn games as much as they did at the start of free-to-play a decade ago.
Well, EA just said publicly they think blockchain and NFTs is the future.
Yeah.
Which is, there's a sign of the times. All right, yeah. Let's see if we can get Jon's wisdom with higher bandwidth. Give it a shot, Jon.
I don't know. Is it working?
We'll try to talk, and I'll listen. I've got a feedback loop going, so I'll let you know.
Okay. I think this is a category that everybody, a little bit of humility to, a little bit of curiosity, and a lot of imagination, because yes, first of all, I totally agree. There's similarities to free to play where everybody was a skeptic, but also this enables certain kinds of gameplay that are different than free to play. I think this is a category that everybody. Now I'm hearing myself feedback in the audio. So I was going to say, I think play to earn is going to evolve a lot. Right now, it's a version of gold farming or power leveling. That's going to keep expanding. I think play to earn is actually going to start blurring the distinctions between storytelling, dungeon mastering, creativity. People are going to add things. They're going to mod things. They're going to add on. They're going to refactor experiences. They're going to explore a lot of new dimensions to this. I actually envision a future where every game that wants to be can be its own creator economy, right? We talk creator economy. There's a creator economy in like the art world right now. There's a creator economy in things like Minecraft, for example, but maybe every game can have a creator economy that's very dynamic, and you create an economy around not just the items and the crafting networks, but also around creativity and adding contributions to that world. So to me, that's where play to earn potentially goes, and that'll really be enabled by this in a way that free to play economies don't really have that ability because of their closed nature.
Interesting. Mitch, got thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, I agree with what Jon is saying. I think that the traditional way of making games hasn't changed, in the sense that you want to make something that's still engaging. You want to make something that people come back for every single day. A lot of the traditional things about making games has not changed. There's certainly new components and ways that you have to sort of integrate your aspects of your economy or of your monetization and your overall business model. But at the end of the day, making a compelling experience that people want to come back to is still the name of the game. If you're focusing on anything else outside of that, you're probably missing the bigger picture.
Right. We have another question coming in. Great question. Sydney asks, what are the biggest differences when you're designing a play to earn economy versus a free to play economy? For instance, factoring in cash out, interoperability, hyperinflation. Mitch, Mr. Economy Designer, can you take this one?
Yeah, it's a very nuanced topic that has a lot of different factors, but I'll try to kind of talk about it from the highest level, which is that the main things that you have to think about is what is your method of growth, meaning how do new people get into your ecosystem? What is your cost of entry? If that is directly tied to what's called value creation, which is how do you make new things inside of your game economy, then you could potentially have a situation in which your cost of entry actually runs up and gets raised, relative to the actual cost of creating value within your game. So Axie Infinity is a core example of this, in which value creation is directly tied to cost of entry, because you have to breed Axies in order to get into the game, because you need Axies in order to play. Other games, for example, may not have this core loop, and they might have a free-to-play model, or it might be a pay-to-get-in-the-door model, where you have to sort of buy an access badge, or it's just a completely open ecosystem. And in those situations, they're able to grow and scale really effectively, but then they have to be much more aware of their core economy, their scarcity, and the amount of resources that are being sort of created or removed and transacted. So from an economic perspective, you want to look at how much is being produced every day and how much is being consumed every day, and you want to make sure that those water levels actually make sense. I mean, this is traditional game economics. There's nothing different here, only it matters. The stakes are a lot higher because there's real money tied to these assets. There's real value that you have to take into consideration. And you want to, and when you're worrying about, concerns about inflation, it becomes even more challenging, because the effects in which the way that people treat things when it's a real world money versus virtual items is not exactly the same. There are similar behaviors in which they will treat things, but when there's money involved, all bets are off, in the sense that people will go to extreme lengths to maximize returns. They are willing to compromise rules. There's all kinds of new factors you have to take into consideration when there's real money attached to it. And that's not counting the legal, tax, regulatory, and other things that are very undefined in this era right now. We're sort of very much in this Wild West space, defining things as we go, but so is the government. And so we have to there's going to be a big reckoning at some point about how that's all going to coalesce. But that's the sort of like first movers advantage that we get being in this space when we aren't those big publicly traded juggernauts, is that we don't have as much oversight, and we don't have to worry as much about shareholders and government regulators coming in to tell us what we're doing.
John, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's regulatory issues around a lot of these different gaming models that people are going to definitely push the issues that of the kind with, and then there's going to be stuff that's just games for the fun. Do that. I think that'll actually be most of the market. It's going to be the next evolution of World of Warcraft and Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. I think the actually most funding for $15 billion of deals in blockchain this year so far, predominantly U.S. funding. So I don't think that we're going to step on it here in the U.S. from a regulatory standpoint. I think we're going to get smart about it. And I think some companies would actually just appreciate some regulation at this point. Like, they all want to do it. Just tell them what the guardrails all are, and people will follow it. So the lack is sort of more harmful than anything else. But I don't think that's going to be an issue.
That's a really interesting point of view. My friend Kevin Werbach, who's a professor at Wharton, has exactly the same point of view about regulation. And I think a big takeaway for everyone listening about the future of NFT and blockchain gaming is that the regulatory issues got to get sorted out, or this is going to stay in the shadows. So we're going to wrap up now. If you guys have any last minute questions, get them in. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We saw quite a few friends in the YouTube audience. It was really great that you came and hang out with us. So let's talk about what's exciting. Let's end with peering into the future. By the way, I'm leaving my video off because it clearly interrupts your audio every time I put it on, Jon. That's my experiment. So what, when you look forward, what is it that makes your heart go pitter pat, that makes you excited, that makes you feel hopeful about this new frontier? Start with you, Jon, and then Mitch.
I think one of the most uniquely human things is to just be creative. And I think everybody in the world has creativity within them. And my own personal mission in life, as well as the goal, to bring forth a lot of that creativity. So I really just envision a future where people go like direct from imagination to the screen. If they have a world that they want to create with a really interesting game experience or a metaverse experience, if we want to use that word, that is much less technical, much more about storytelling and artistry and world building, all the fun stuff. And by the way, the stuff that players actually care about. So what's interesting about this is it opens up the economy a lot more. It allows people to make interconnecting components so that we can all, as a world of people, creatively contribute to this, whether it's a piece of code, if that's what you want to do, or artistry and content and expression. So we're at the very, very early stage of this. It's gonna develop a lot over the next decade, but it's going to be the convergence of not only this, but AI and creative tools and things like what my company are doing to try to make it a more of a no-code, low-code process for building these sophisticated communities and economies into your game.
So what you're saying is unleashing creativity through ownership.
Yeah, well, through ownership is a big part of it, right? Because right now we have a lot of big platforms that take a lot of the economics, the pockets of, or we can push power, not just the economics, but the power back to the hands of people who actually have the original ideas, who have the creativity, the game studios, the artists, the storytellers, the people who are making this stuff, and allow them to connect with their communities more directly. That'll be a much better place than, big platform companies picking your pocket for advertising and all the other stuff that they take out. So let's all.
Awesome. What about you, Mitch?
I'm hopeful for the experiences that will be brought to the players in the future. I'm already seeing this emergent behavior happening in real time in some of the games that I'm playing. I'll share a quick little anecdote. So one of the games that I've spoken about earlier is called Mirror 4, and we have a guild inside of that game called the Yield Squad, which has grown to become a big sort of international organization now, where we have members in Brazil, in Colombia, in North America, all around the world. And every week we're fighting for territory, we're fighting for control in PvP in a sort of traditional MMO sense. But what's different and unique is the way in which this game has broken down language barriers and global barriers around the world. And so when we're playing, there's still 50 or 60 of us hanging out in Discord at the same time, but we're speaking in English, in Portuguese, and in Spanish. We're translating in real time. We're communicating across languages. People are translating in between things, and we no longer care about what language you speak inside of our guild. We can translate everything. We don't really worry about those concerns anymore, and we've just gone global. And these language barriers that have been broken down also happen inside of the game. You click one button and every line of text is translated into English just automatically for you, basically. And so people just talk in their native language. They talk in more simpler sentences so that they can translate easier. And the game is just now global. To me, this represents this is a small little fractional example of what I think all games are going to move towards, in which they become much more global. the barriers of localization sort of really kind of streamline and allow games to exist in a more natural state, that it doesn't really matter where you are, who you are, you can all sort of play on a more equal footing. And I think that that is incredibly compelling and really, really exciting to be a part of.
Fantastic. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us and learning with us together. Here's of a gaming that all of us can participate in and feel like we're a part of. Thanks, Mitch and John, for your great insights.
Thanks,
looking
Amy
forward to
Jo.
the next
Thanks,
one.
Mitch. Fun as usual.
And quick shout out, everybody who loved this, VentureBeat. There's a link in our description. Be sharing even more great info at VentureBeat at GamesBeat Next, which is coming up in just a. So check that out if you're into this and you want to continue the discussion. See you soon.
All right.
Thanks again. All right.